You thought hiding $5 million would be the hardest part. You were wrong. The hardest part is living with the knowledge that somewhere out there, the people who trusted you with that money are watching, waiting, and they are not the kind of people who forget. This is not a movie. This is not fiction. This is a story about one man, one decision, and the slow, suffocating terror of what happens when the most dangerous organization on the planet decides you owe them something. His name has been changed to protect what little safety he still has left, but everything you're about to hear is real, and by the time this story ends, you will understand why some debts can never truly be paid. His name, for the purpose of this story, is Marco, and in the fall of 2019, Marco was broke. Not the kind of broke where you skip a vacation or sell your car. The kind of broke where you are counting quarters for food, where the electricity gets shut off on a Tuesday, and you sit in the dark wondering how you ended up here. He was 34 years old, living in a city on the southern edge of Texas, working odd jobs that paid nothing and disappeared quickly. He had no criminal record, no gang affiliations, no dangerous history. He was, by every measure, invisible. And in the world of organized crime, invisible men are exactly what cartels are looking for. It started with a neighbor, a man named Tito, who Marco had known casually for 2 years. Tito drove a truck, dressed well, and always seemed to have cash. One evening in October, Tito knocked on Marco's door and said he had an opportunity. Something simple, something low risk. And then Tito used a word that Marco would later say he should have run from the second he heard it. Tito called it a favor. That should have been the end of it right there, but Marco was desperate, and desperate men hear the word favor and think opportunity. The job was simple on the surface. A package would be delivered to Marco's apartment. Marco would hold it for 72 hours. Then someone would come to collect it. No questions, no involvement, just hold it. And for that, Marco would receive $3,000 cash. $3,000 for holding a box for 3 days. He told himself it was probably drugs, small time, nothing serious. He told himself a lot of things that week, but the truth was he already knew. Some part of him already understood exactly what he was stepping into. He just didn't want to admit it, because admitting it meant saying no, and Marco couldn't afford to say no. The package arrived on a Thursday morning. 2 men Marco had never seen before knocked, handed him a bag, said nothing, and left. The bag was heavier than he expected, and that weight, that quiet, dense, impossible weight, should have told him everything. But he didn't open it. He put it in the closet, closed the door, and told himself $3,000, 3 days, done. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that inside that bag was not drugs. Inside that bag was $5 million in banded, untraceable cash, and it belonged to one of the most powerful cartel organizations operating across the southern United States and northern Mexico. He found out on day 2. He wasn't supposed to open the bag, but he did. And when he saw those bricks of cash stacked tight and precise inside that plain black duffel bag, Marco said the room started spinning. He sat on the floor of his closet for 20 minutes, unable to move. His hands were shaking. His chest was tight, because suddenly he understood. This wasn't a small favor. This was the kind of operation that involved the kind of people who made problems disappear permanently. And he was sitting in the middle of it, with 5 million reasons for them to care very deeply about where he was and what he was doing. He closed the bag, put it back, went to the kitchen, drank water, tried to breathe, and told himself, 1 more day, just 1 more day, and someone would come and take it, and it would be over. But that's not what happened, because the next morning, everything changed. The men who were supposed to collect the bag never showed. Marco waited all day. Nothing. By evening, he called Tito. No answer. He called again. No answer. By midnight, he had called 11 times. Silence. Tito was gone. Completely, utterly gone. And Marco was sitting in a small apartment in Texas with $5 million of cartel money and no way to reach anyone. That night, Marco said he did not sleep. He lay on the floor next to the bag and stared at the ceiling and waited for the sound of boots on the stairs. That sound never came, but what came next was somehow worse. 3 days passed, then 5, then a week. Nothing. No calls, no visitors, no messages, just silence. And in that silence, something began to happen inside Marco's mind, something dangerous. He started to think. He started to wonder, what if Tito had been arrested? What if the cartel thought the money was already gone? What if nobody was coming back? What if this was his chance? $5 million sitting in his closet, and maybe, just maybe, nobody knew he had it. This is the moment that defines everything that comes after. This is the moment where Marco made the decision that would consume the next 2 years of his life. He moved the money. He didn't take it all. He told himself he was just being careful. He drove 2 hours south, rented a storage unit under a fake name, split the cash into 3 separate bags, and hid 2 of them inside the unit behind a false panel he built himself. He kept 1 bag at his apartment. He told himself he was just protecting it. He told himself he was going to return it if anyone ever came back. He told himself a lot of things, but the truth was simpler and darker than any of that. Marco had made his choice, and now the clock was ticking. He started spending, slowly at first, just the basics: a better apartment, a used car that actually ran, groceries that didn't come from a discount bin. He was careful. He was deliberate. He told himself he was invisible. But here is what Marco did not understand. Here is what almost nobody who ends up in this situation understands. Cartels do not forget. Cartels do not lose track of $5 million, and the silence was never silence at all. It was them watching. It was them waiting. It was them building a picture, piece by piece, of exactly where their money had gone and exactly who had taken it. 8 months after the bag disappeared into Marco's closet, he got a call. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, quiet, completely without emotion, and it said simply, "We know where you live. We know about the storage unit. We know about the car. And we know about the money." Then the voice said something that Marco would repeat years later when he finally felt safe enough to talk about this story. The voice said, "We are not angry. We just want what belongs to us." And then the line went dead. Marco sat in his car in a parking lot for 3 hours after that call. He couldn't go home. He didn't know if they were already there. He didn't know if the people in the cars around him were civilians or something else entirely. Everything felt like a trap. Everything felt like it was closing in, and that was exactly how they wanted him to feel. He called a friend, a man he trusted completely, someone completely outside this world, and he told him everything. Every detail: the bag, the money, the storage unit, the call. His friend told him to go to the police. Marco said he laughed when he heard that, not because it was funny, but because it was the most terrifying suggestion anyone had ever made to him. Go to the police and say what, exactly? That he had been holding $5 million of cartel money and hidden it and spent some of it, and now they want it back? That was not a confession that led to protection. That was a confession that led to prison. And prison, in Marco's calculation, was only slightly safer than what was already coming for him. He didn't go to the police. Instead, he made a plan. He would gather everything he could from the storage unit. He would return the full amount minus what he had spent to a drop location. He would find a way to communicate through Tito's old network that he was cooperating fully. He would make them understand that he was not a threat, not a thief, just a scared man who made a terrible mistake. He believed, somehow, that rational logic could operate in a world that ran entirely on power and fear. That was his second great mistake. Because when Marco arrived at the storage unit the next morning, the false panel was open. Both bags were gone. Only one small bundle of cash remained, as if left deliberately, as if they wanted to know they had been there, as if they were sending a message that said, "We can reach you anywhere, and we chose to let you find this because we want you afraid, not dead, at least not yet." He stood in that storage unit for a long time. The fluorescent light buzzed above him. The smell of dust and concrete filled his lungs, and Marco understood fully and completely that there was no plan. There was no way out. There was only whatever came next, and he had no control over any of it. The calls continued over the following weeks, always calm, always polite, always terrifying. They never threatened directly. They didn't need to. Every call was a reminder that they were close, that they were watching.